While you're in jail, you can have no contact with the victim or the victim's family. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
That is Tiffany Griffith, a 36-year-old mom in court accused of holding a 6-year-old boy underwater at a resort pool until deputies say the boy started bleeding from his nose. We have the arrest report, and it's shocking. It spells out a witness who watched her put both hands on the boy and hold him underwater, and a security video that investigators say captured the entire act. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Stewart. What started as a poolside game spiraled into a felony arrest for Florida mom Tiffany Griffith, who deputies say held a 6-year-old boy underwater after he allegedly dunked her child in the pool. But the detail that anchors this case, the one laid out in the arrest report, is what the boy's mom gave deputies afterward: a photograph of blood on a towel coming from her son's nose after he ran from the pool. Now, that's the injury that Griffith's own lawyer tried to minimize in court, prompting a pointed exchange with the judge, and it ends with the defendant's own voice from the defense table.
While you're in jail, you can have no contact with the victim or the victim's family. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, this happened at the Gaylord Palms Resort in Kissimmee, Florida. It's near Orlando. The scene: you have kids playing, splashing. You know the sound, but deputies say it got aggressive. They say there was a 6-year-old boy who dunked another 6-year-old boy in the water, and then they say the second boy's mom, 36-year-old Tiffany Griffith, got in the water, and that is what changes everything. What happens next is the stuff of every parent's panic. Authorities allege that she, Tiffany, placed her hands on the first little boy's shoulders, forcing him under, and then held him there. And not just for a second, for several seconds. And here's a chilling part: the detail that changes everything. When that boy fought his way up and ran to his parents, he was sobbing and bleeding from his nose. Now, Tiffany Griffith is in the Osceola County Jail, and she's charged with aggravated child abuse. No bond, and in court, when her lawyer suggested that holding a kid underwater might not cause that kind of injury, the judge basically said, "Are you serious?" Listen to this.
The allegation is the child was running to his parents with a nosebleed. There's no mention of any action that was taken in between that time that would have led to those injuries.
So you don't think that the placing both hands on his shoulders, forcibly submerging him underwater and holding him underwater is sufficient?
I believe it was a. If that was, I would just argue again, Your Honor, as to what I said. I think that I would withdraw my argument, I guess.
After that exchange, the judge turned directly to Griffith and laid down the rules, and the defendant responded.
While you're in jail, you can have no contact with the victim or the victim's family. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, good luck.
A quiet "yes, ma'am" in court. The Osceola County Sheriff's Office arrest report lays out this investigation, beginning with the call that deputies responded to on December 19th. A deputy writes that they were called to the Gaylord for a verbal disturbance, but the assistant security manager met them and said it was actually a possible drowning incident. The deputy first spoke with the little boy's mom. According to the report, she stated her son, quote, exited the pool and approached her crying and bleeding from his nose. She said immediately after, an unknown woman, later identified as Tiffany Griffith, approached her and began yelling and even, quote, began recording her with her phone. Now, that woman was then pulled away by a man with a child. The boy's father was also there and gave a statement in Spanish. He said that he was sitting in a beach chair while the kids played in the 2-foot deep pool. He stated his son, quote, returned from the pool crying with blood coming from his nose. And he said Griffith followed his son, yelling that she pushed him because, quote, he had pushed her child. Now, he told deputies another guest approached him and said, quote, they witnessed the same female attempt to drown his son. And that's where a key independent witness comes in when looking at this story and what kind of went down at what was supposed to be a really nice day by the pool. Another guest told deputies that he saw a woman in a black 2-piece bathing suit enter the pool calmly. The report states he, quote, observed the female move behind one of the male children and placed both of her hands on the child's shoulders. The female fully submerged the child underwater for approximately 2 to 4 seconds. Now, that may not sound like a long time, but think about being a child. 1, 2, 3, 4. That child must have been terrified if all of this is true. After that, he says that she splashed the boy again, then followed him as he ran to his family and started yelling. But the investigation did not stop with witness statements because hotel security identified the room that Griffith was staying in, and then deputies reviewed security footage. The report states that the video from around 4:22 in the afternoon shows the kids playing and splashing, and it shows Tiffany Griffith in that black bathing suit enter the pool, approach the kids, and splash them. Then it captures that critical moment. She approaches the boy from behind and placing both hands on his shoulders. That is the exact wording in the police report. Then, quote, Tiffany then forcefully submerged him underwater for approximately 2 seconds. And even that small amount of time, 1, 2, must have been terrifying for that little boy. Now that video evidence, paired with the witness statements and the photo of the bloody towels from the boy's nosebleeds submitted by his mom, form the basis for the arrest and subsequent charge of aggravated child abuse. Now, there's been a lot of debate online under the sheriff's announcement of this arrest. Some commenters are asking why the 6-year-old who dunked her child wasn't taken into custody, with one person saying, is the juvenile that dunked her child in custody? And then you have one person responding, quote, no, he cried to his mom when someone else taught him a lesson his parents should have taught him. So you see some people actually taking the side of Griffith based on these accusations. Then you have another person who appears to respond, quote, why would a 6-year-old be taken into custody? Children make mistakes. An adult should not put their hands on someone else's child. One of the big tools that we have here at Law and Crime is Truth Finder, because it is a powerful public record search service that we use to learn more about the people who are involved in our stories. You plug in a name, you get an address, you can get information about their criminal history and much, much more, even contact information. And it can give you some peace of mind even if you don't work in the world of true crime, because it's one of the largest public record search services in the US. And with a paid subscription, you get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone, including looking up registered sex offenders in your area. Stay informed, stay safe, search public records with Truth Finder at truthfinder.com/OTC. Joining us now to talk a little bit more about this case is retired NYPD Detective David Sarney. Always great to have you on Law and Crime. It just seems like this is just one of those moments where tempers really flare up, and then you have this woman who's accused of certainly submerging a kid underwater is not it just sounds like a very scary situation that played out. As an investigator, when you come to one of these types of things and you have parents that are mad, I think of like the viral videos of parents fighting at Little League games too, right? How do you handle that situation when you first arrived?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's one of those situations that's going to happen. I mean, parents are protecting their kids, but to the level of what you do, and I always tell, you have to understand, you're the adult. And if your kid is a situation, you have to sort of act as an adult. And, we talk about things that are right and wrong and illegal. What happened here was wrong and illegal because, you don't want your kid being touched by anybody. And that's where the victim's family feels. But you also can understand the mother's point of view that, I'm going to teach this other kid a lesson. But the problem is, that's not within the boundaries of what you can do legally. You could be as angry as you want to be, but you have to let cooler heads prevail. Maybe talk to the parent, maybe go that route. This is in a hotel, this is in a pool. They're aggressively splashing each other, and that's really what you have. I don't know what her son, the perpetrator, defendant's son told her, so she acted out of line. Because, emotions get ahead of you. You're a mama bear, you're going to protect your kid at all costs, but you also have to have level head. You have to have a level-headedness. And because of that, you have someone arrested for this. And it's a felony, and that's the one thing you realize. In Florida, this is a felony. So she's looking at serious situation here. The monetary cost for an attorney, all these things. When it comes to the police investigation, it's what we have. You go there, you interview the victim, you interview the victim's family, then you get whatever evidence you have. You interview the suspect at this point. You get some information, and based on all of that, there's probable cause to arrest, and that's what you have. And if the victim's family wants that person arrested, you're not within the boundaries to do something different. You have to make that arrest. There's no discretion in this. This is a felony, so that's how they're treated as.
Yeah, and it just seems like I can just kind of picture in my mind, and we've requested the body cam video. We'll see if that comes in, of just this kind of chaotic situation, and also stressful because it's by a pool, body of water. But on one hand, like, you know, there are probably cases where, I mean, this is a parental dispute, but now it's a felony. What do you make of the charge itself? Because she is being held without bond right now. And we have, I mean, and listen, I think of, you know, from one hand, for the kid, the 6-year-old who was allegedly dunked underwater, you don't know who this woman is, and you're being held underwater for 1 second, 2 seconds. Like, that's got to be a very scary situation. For this woman, though, Griffith, I mean, she's being held without bond. There are cases we cover, like attempted murders, where someone's out by the afternoon, and she's, you know, the week of Christmas behind bars.
Yeah, and this comes to the discretion of the judge. And I think at the arraignment, when our defense attorney laid out that it really wasn't as bad as you think it is, because how does a kid's nose bleed? Apparently it was a nosebleed in this. How could that equate to being dunked? And the judge you could hear within the judge's commentary that she was not happy about that answer. And, you know, you would think at a first arrest that this would be an overall, you know, release and recognizance, maybe bail set, so you make sure she returns back to court. But this is a remand. Like, she's held without bond. So I don't know, you know, judges have a lot of discretion in these cases, and that's what it comes down to. And I talk about the criminal justice system having that. Discretion's within the police, which is limited because it was a felony, and also you have a complainant who says, I want to pursue this case. The district attorney's office, who had enough evidence to believe they could pursue this case further. And now a judge. They didn't even lower the charges with the district attorney's office. They kept the charges as that. So when they bring those charges to the judge has discretion whether or not to do a release. And based on the unfortunate defense attorney's answers, it probably got the judge a little angry that this is more than what you're saying it is. This kid who's dunked in the water, you know what, we're going to remand her. And I don't know if it's a punishment toward the defense attorney or to the defendant in this case.
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, you know, it's definitely a serious, you know, what she's accused of. When it comes to the evidence, you know, it seems like, so you have this incident with the kids in the pool. She allegedly dunks one kid under the water for roughly 2 seconds, 2 to 4 seconds, it was said. There's surveillance video of this, so it doesn't seem like it's denying the fact that it happened. But it also seems like after the fact, she then is like taking her camera and like doing this, which, like, those videos are never good to see when someone takes it to that level. So it doesn't seem like, kind of in this rage, that there was any sort of control. How does that, when it comes to this case, and especially for the police, where it's not just that spur of the moment, there's no apology, it seems, that came in. It like just escalated to, okay, now after doing this to the 6-year-old, I'm going for the parents, and I'm going to record them because somehow this video is going to help me in the long run.
Yeah, again, this comes back to the same issues. It is illegal. It is against the law what happened. You're given the facts when you respond to that scene by the victim. You have to weigh out what happened. You get more evidence. I believe they're taking bloody tissues. They have the surveillance video. They have other witnesses that saw what happened. They have all of that in play. And no matter what, it just comes back down to, what is the mental state of the mom? Was this reckless? It's reckless. It could be. It's intentional in a sense. And this is what they'll have to deal with. This is going to cost the family a lot of money, because you're dealing with an attorney that's going to cost you at minimum at least a $5,000 retainer. So this is going to be an expensive trial for this. Will it go to trial? That will depend. But you have a family who now it's not only going to be a criminal situation, you're going to have a civil issue, because I guarantee you that the family is going to sue them because of what they did and the injury sustained by the child. So they're going to have. This is something that police are very limited in that discretion. So they have to make that arrest, and that's what we do, and that's what we, as law enforcement, we have to. But because of the lack of sense in that moment, whatever she saw, read, the anger about what she had, she's protecting her son, but it wasn't even an immediate protection. She actually had to seek that child out to do what she did as a punishment. And again, I can empathize with the emotion. I cannot empathize with the action, because you can't. Because as a parent, and I've been a parent, and we get mad about people, how our kids maybe get bullied a lot or something like that. but we have to be the adult in the room. We have to make better choices. And apparently, I think there might have been alcohol in play with this when she might have just not thinking of what she did. You know, this is all going to come out as the criminal justice process goes through. But the original thing was, you can't do things like that. You know, as much as angry as you be, you can't attack a child, whether or not, I mean, there was no physical injury to her child. You know, she's hearing what the 6-year-old told her, and let me tell you, did the 6-year-old, you know, people are saying it's aggressively splashing. They're not saying that he was dunked. She took that as, I'm going to go get this kid, and I'm going to teach him a lesson. That's not within your abilities as an outsider. That's not even the parent. Locate the parent. Locate the other parent. Tell her what happened. And this way, you know, you have to be mature in this situation. And unfortunately, this act of maturity is now deemed criminal.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't do that. How much do the wishes of the family factor into how this process plays out? The victim's family. I mean, clearly they were upset, and it seems like, you know, no one wants a camera shoved in their face. And, you know, you also had these other witnesses who apparently, you know, saw everything and then the surveillance video. But let's just say if it was a different situation and the victim's family says, actually, you know what, it is what it is, let's move on. How would that impact the case as opposed to a family that says, no, I want this woman held to the furthest extent of the law that it possibly can be?
Well, that would end up to almost the discretion of the police at that point, where if you're having a family who doesn't want to press charges, and the reality is you have no complainant, no case in a sense. So, and was the injury sustained? And this comes back to the, you know, would this have had a supervisor get involved to decide what they're going to do? You know, could this have been pushed to the side if they did want to pursue it? Possibly. I mean, you know, you have no complainant, depending on how the county deals with these type of cases. If no complainant in this case, they don't want to pursue. And it's really the parents, because the juvenile doesn't have that ability to pursue a case. It's the parents. The parents felt hurt. Not only, you know, someone put their hands on my kid. I'm angry too. And you want to get in my face about it. You know what? I don't care. Maybe it weans off later on, but right at that moment, you're going to have the opportunity by the victim's family to pursue charges. And would the police not have gone further with this? It's possible. You know, this could be just back to rough horseplay. But reality is, it's not horseplay between kids. It's horseplay with an adult who doesn't know this kid and dunked the kid. So this is where you're going to have it. So there is discretion, and I can't say what we would have done otherwise. Maybe people would have pursued it either way, but if you have no complainant, you have no case.
It's alleged that she had held this boy's head under the water for 2 seconds. I think one witness said 2 to 4, but then after the surveillance video, it looked like it was around 2 seconds. Does that time matter, whether that's considered a long time or a short time?
It's considered any time, and that's what the statute deals with. You're dealing with some, you know, the child also sustained a nosebleed. So there is injury that they're seeing. And this is where police would be used to see an injury to the child. Do you, in your discretion, decide, well, it's nothing? If they're being told this woman attacked my child and dunked him, you're getting everyone else to say that. And if you're the police officer there, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 30 seconds, it doesn't matter. What are you going to do? You're put into a position where that arrest was going to be made, probably even regardless whether the victim wanted to pursue the case or not, because they might have declined to prosecute at a certain point. But this, felonies, a lot of felonies must arrest situations. And when it comes to children and adults, do you want to be the cop who says it's okay? You know what? We'll just let it go. We'll let horseplay. If you do that, you better get some real documentation from the victim's family that you don't want to pursue any further. Some written documentation. We don't want to pursue this case any further. We think it's we don't really want to do anything more with it. But at that moment in time when the police responded, you had that action, you had that reaction by the victim's family.
When it comes to, I just want to bring up some of the comments that we've seen online, because I thought that they were interesting, because you have a lot of debate that seems to be going on. One person saying, why would a 6-year-old, someone, or I'm going to get this right here, someone saying, why is the 6-year-old who dunked her son in the water not being prosecuted to some extent by the police in this case, because it is alleged that this 6-year-old attacked her 6-year-old, not me bringing this up, but a commenter, and you do see some people who seem to be on the side of the suspect Griffith in this case. How do you handle that as a police officer? In some ways, I guess if it was adults, that there would be some sort of assault argument in place? I mean, how do you handle that?
If it's between two kids, it's between two kids. They're juveniles. Can you talk that to both parents? Say, do we want to pursue this criminally? Because this is what's going to happen. So you could lay out the situation. They go to juvenile, they get arrested. Juveniles, going to be juvenile record. You're going to have you're going to have detention officers. You're going to have some juvenile officers go to their house and talk to them about these things. Or do you want to end it here? But that wasn't what happened. What happened was the victim's child was attacked by the woman, by an adult female. If it's kids, you could probably get away from the kid thing, but it's an adult to a child. And there's where, that's where the level of discretion is different. As kids, they're splashing each other. Was there physical injury? If there's no physical injury, there's nothing. But in this case, apparently there's a nosebleed, which supports physical injury. It's not just a dunking. Somewhere along the line, that kid sustained an injury that caused a nosebleed. And I know at arraignment, they're like, that doesn't happen when you dunk somebody. But the reality is, it's still an injury. There's still bleeding from a 6-year-old child. So you're going to be, that goes back to the limitation of what, as discretion as a law enforcement. You're going to walk away from a nosebleed after someone said they pushed a kid into the water? You're putting yourself in a very precarious position. So the police did what they needed to do at that time. What the parents could have done, maybe settled it, but the reality is it's now a criminal matter. It's no longer just kids splash each other and you got mad at them. You grabbed the kid, dunked him, a stranger. And imagine if that was, and I said this, imagine if anyone else would do that. And we're outsiders. But if you're a parent, I understand both sides of the issue. But the thing is, once the police get involved, it limits a lot of that. And that's what happened here. It limited a lot of the discretion that could have happened prior to the police response.
And again, going back to her arraignment, where it just seems like the judge did not take too kindly to the approach that the defense attorney took, and he currently has a client being held without bond. She's not due back in court until the 23rd. So here she is the week of Christmas, in county jail in Osceola County for this. What typically is the best approach for someone in her situation when you think of completely losing it, has done something that as she's accused, cannot do? What is the right approach to take in that situation once the police show up and then once you find yourself in a position where you're facing a judge?
Apologize profusely. I mean, that's what you're looking at. You have to make the apology. You have to put yourself out there. And I call it taking the L in a sense. You take the loss. But the problem is the police are there. And it really caused that. And that was because whatever escalated during that moment in time before the police arrived caused police response. At arraignment, with the attorney, a defense attorney, I really think I don't really judge people, but I think the approach he took was an improper approach, given the fact it's a first arrest. There was probably a better way of explaining what happened. She was protecting her son. She didn't realize what she was doing. She was very upset at the time. It was just a rash accident. She's very sorry for what she did. But he kind of pushed off the bloody nose issue. And that, I guarantee, ticked off the judge, because I've not seen this type of case where it's very limited injury have someone who's never been arrested before getting remanded, being held in jail until the next court appearance. It doesn't happen that often. But the thing is, it's a felony, and that's the issue. It's a felony, this type of this action.
I know this is in Florida and you've worked in New York. Say this had happened in New York. Is this something that eventually could become a misdemeanor?
That's the thing, too. It could have been dropped to misdemeanor within the district attorney's office, yes. This is the one thing with the process. Police have to make the arrest based on totality of circumstances, based on the facts there. That's probable cause. With the arrest, that's a felony. They confer with the district attorney's office. The district attorney's office can then determine whether or not they wish to, with their own discretion, to keep the charges, to reduce the charges, or to decline to prosecute. They felt the charges were sustainable to process this case through trial. So that's why the arraignment, they were charged with that arraignment, that third degree, that felony, aggravated child abuse. It is a horribly sounding term, but you could look at the reasons why. And if you look at the statute, it covers a lot. And it covers what the defendant did in this case. So could this all have been avoided? And the way it would have been avoided is if they apologized profusely and the police didn't respond. Once the police respond, it takes a lot of discretion out of the dealings with the family. And the emotions on both sides were probably extremely elevated. And the victim's family had a better criminal ability, an ability to have that crime charged to the defendant.
Yeah, and you think, too, if it was just hey, young kids get into something at the pool, if the parents just had a conversation about it, we wouldn't be here talking about this, and she wouldn't be in jail. But of course, there's things you just cannot do, and this appears to be one of them. Retired NYPD Detective David Sarney, thank you as always for being with us on Law and Crime. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and stay safe.
Tiffany Griffith's next court date is December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, and she continues to spend time in the Osceola County Jail because she is being held without bond. That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.